Man, it takes forever to go live. Once you hit the button, again, I was not breathing. Good evening, Shifties. What's happening? We're back on Shift the Journey. My name is Tito Amogus. I'm your host. This is, if you've never watched this show, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what we do here. When I say we, I mean me and whoever I have on here on a different week. So this is actually a passion project of mine. I love to connect people. I love to give people free information about career journeys, career paths, because everybody should know by now that career paths are never straight. They're never a straight line. There's not really a career progression ladder. It's so much different than that, especially when you make a shift within a field or like way out, from here to there. So anyway, every Monday I get the opportunity to come on here and interview somebody different, and they can talk about their career journey. This week we have Jesse McBride. Woo! Everybody give Jesse a hand. Jesse and I go way back, good friends. I remember when he was, I don't know, when he was a young man. Yeah, and I was a not so young man, but younger than I am now. I'll tell you that. So we go back probably, what's it been? Almost 15 years.
Yeah, I think 2009.
2009. So that is 15 years. That's crazy. All right. So yeah, Jesse was actually he's actually from the DC area, and he's going to tell you all about like what brought him down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and what he's doing now. So why don't you? I normally ask people, hey, tell people where you're from originally, but I just kind of gave it away. But you can be a little bit more specific if you want.
Yeah.
So where are you from originally?
I am, spoiler alert, from DC, Washington DC, right outside of Washington DC. Originally, I'm from Germany. My dad was military. Dad born in the army, and I was born in Germany. Lived there till I was about 4, and then my dad got stationed right outside of DC, and so that's where I lived for the better part of about 20 years before Hurricane Katrina hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast in 2005, and my parents, myself, and my sister moved down here. We came to volunteer after the storm a couple times and ended up moving down here in 2007 and have been here ever since and live just about a mile from the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. So when you were growing up in the DC area, what kind of like career aspirations did you have?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess growing up, I think like every little kid, I thought I was going to be a fireman or an astronaut. I actually wanted to be a pilot and then a aeronautical engineer, and I wanted to go to school in Daytona at Embry-Riddle, and then I realized that you actually had to be good at school to to get in, and so those dreams were quickly shot. But I went to college actually for criminal justice, and I wanted to do federal law enforcement eventually, and I don't really know where that came. I think God's always placed in me just a desire, I guess, to serve people, and we'll get to that eventually. But so maybe it was out of there. I don't know, but yeah, I went to school for criminal justice and was planning to be going to law enforcement.
Yeah. So what happened? Did you end up graduating?
I did. So just because I didn't like school, I was still able to graduate. And but it's funny you say that. My sister graduated a couple years before me, and she went to Virginia Tech, which is a great school. I didn't get into Virginia Tech, and so I went to Radford. Radford was my safety school. Radford University in the Blue Ridge or in the Appalachian Mountains in Southwest Virginia. And when I graduated college, my mom specifically seemed like really excited and maybe even borderline surprised. And I remember saying to her, I said, "Mom, I remember when Leah graduated, you were like, you were excited, but you almost seemed surprised today." She said, "Well, Jess, there were a few times I wasn't surprised." So your question is in line with, I guess, my mother's. They've always been super supportive. But yes, I did graduate and had a great GPA in my major, not so
Mhm.
much not my major, but yes, graduated in 2006 with a bachelor's in criminal justice.
So then what was your approach to like finding that first job?
Yeah, so I had applied to a few different police departments, just local police departments in the Northern Virginia area. One of them just didn't. I didn't get hired. Another one, with Fairfax County Police Department, I had passed some of the initial things, and so was getting ready for the sit down interview. And he like pulled up my record, and he said, "I see you have a speeding ticket." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Tell me about that." And it was my last semester in college. I was actually building log homes about an hour
Mhm.
from school, and it was but out there. It's little towns, kind of all over the way, all over. And the speed limit went from like 55 to 45 to 35 to 25,
Mhm.
plus, plus a school zone. And I was going
Oh.
25 in what I thought was a 25, but it was a 15 because of the school zone. And so
Oh.
got a ticket. So all I said, so it was like 6:30 in the morning. I'm a college kid, like out in the middle of nowhere, going to build houses. The cop pulls me over and he says, "Yeah, I know it's really confusing. To try and pay attention." I'm like, "Don't tell me how confusing it is, and then still give me the ticket." But he gave me,
Oh.
anyways, at this interview with Fairfax, and Fairfax was incredibly competitive. They said, this ticket just shows immaturity, and so
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I was a 21-year-old driving an hour from school to go build log homes at 6:30 in the morning. What do you mean immature? Uh,
That's crazy. I've
yeah,
I mean, I've heard of people who were like, "Oh yeah, I want to be a cop." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure I know a little bit of your past and I don't think that's a good idea to like try to do that." And then they went and then they're like, "Have you ever been arrested?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they're okay, yeah, no, you can't be a cop. So, but like the traffic ticket thing, man, that's crazy.
yeah.
I had no idea.
So, uh-oh,
What are you doing?
technical difficulties. All right, we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know if my Wi-Fi was being wacky, and so I went on
No.
to. Oh,
Yeah. Uh-oh. You're frozen. I'm about to text you, man. You're frozen.
you got me?
Yeah, I was about to text you and it says that your notifications are silenced. But yeah,
Oh,
you froze.
I was trying to be. I did silence my notifications because I was trying to be focused. But yes, all right, internet's good to go. So yeah, they said that, and they're like, "You can try applying next year." I was like, "What?" I was like, "That's great." And looking, and again, we'll get more into it. It was. I know it was God just closing a door. So
Yeah.
that door closed, and so I had applied with Washington D.C. Metro PD.
Mhm.
Interesting fact: there's more police per capita in Washington D.C. than anywhere else in the world, because like every federal agency has their own certified police department. So like even like the
Oh,
Bureau of Engraving and Printing has like their own police department. There's DC Metro.
wow.
There's the Metro PD, like the train, the Metro. There's Metro PD. There's Federal PD. There's FBI PD. There's Department of Justice. Like, I mean, there's just ridiculous amounts of police departments. But anyways, so I had applied with the DC Metro, so like city police, and I had passed all the tests. The last test that I had to pass was the physical, and I was in pretty good shape. I was 21, pretty good shape. I wasn't really worried about passing it based on the specifications. And so the test was going to be my second weekend home from college. My
Mhm.
first my first weekend home from college, I was playing church league softball, and I'd played college lacrosse, soccer, everything. Never really had a serious injury other than
Oh
some
no.
minor concussions. Church league softball, first weekend home from college, I break and dislocate my ankle. And so broke both bones, tore all the tendons. I literally couldn't walk for about 6 months. And so had to have pretty major surgery, and and all sorts of stuff. And so
That's crazy.
I had to call the police
That's
department and say, "Hey, I can't take that test next weekend." So
Man. Yeah, you know what's funny is that baseball, America's pastime, yada yada yada. And then like softball is like, well, aside from the ladies, obviously that's a lot harder. But like church league softball, right? It's supposed to be easy. It's recreational. Wiffle ball on the beach with your unit, that's also supposed to be
right,
easy, recreational. You jacked up your ankle. I tore my rotator cuff playing wiffle ball with my unit. So,
right.
it happens. But yeah, so that's pretty nuts. So I want to ask you one thing. So this was like 2006, 2007, around that time.
Mhm.
So one thing, like when you were introing yourself, you were talking about like Katrina, and then you came down after Katrina. Had you ever done that before with any other natural disaster or any kind of catastrophe where you were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna roll in with my tools and I'm gonna fix some stuff up and all that?
No. So my dad had he after he got out of the army, he had a construction business, and so I had all through really even like from middle school, high school, college, I would work for him for summers, and so had done construction. But no, I had never been on a mission trip. I'd done some like stuff like locally, helped out like handicapped or elderly, but no, I'd never done disaster response. I had never been to Mississippi, and
Hmm.
full confession, I thought Mississippi was everyone sitting on the front porch drinking and playing the banjo, going ding 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 ding. And there's some places in Mississippi that are like
Yeah, it's not far from the beach, actually.
that. But got down here to the coast, and from living here that people here say they're from the coast. They don't say they're from Mississippi. Uh,
Yeah.
all to say, no, I had never done anything like that before.
That's interesting. So, I want to go back to your like talk about your like looking for a job and stuff, but I was just curious about the whole thing with Katrina. So, did you know anybody? Did your family know anybody down here?
We didn't. So Katrina hit in towards the end of the summer in 2005,
It's like
and
August 31, I think.
yeah, and I was still in school. My sister had just graduated, and so I think it was kind of her that really kind of said, "Hey, let's go down and work down there." So they came down the end of '05, and
Hmm.
uh, I had finals in college, so I couldn't come. So it was just my my sister and my parents that came down in
Hmm.
'05. And then when they came back and they said, "Hey, we should go back," and so we didn't go back until February 2007. By that time,
Hmm.
I graduated. I like literally just started walking again, and so we came down. So to answer your question, no, we didn't. They had some connections with that organization, but prior to them
Yeah.
coming down, didn't know anyone and really had pretty much limited relationship other than
Yeah.
that organization that we had worked with.
So, like, for some context, for some people who are unfamiliar with or unaware, Hurricane Katrina was like one of those, I don't know, once in a lifetime or twice in a lifetime, depending who you talk to, type of storm.
They call it
Because,
a 300-year storm. So
right, but like Hurricane Camille was in the late 60s, right? And it did all kinds of damage down here. But Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans got all the press for obvious reasons. The whole like the city's underwater and people are starving and people are stranded and all that. In Mississippi on the coast, like whole sections of houses, like whole neighborhoods, whole towns wiped off the face of the earth, right? And so you have all these people who like maybe left to like avoid the storm, and they come home and all they have is a slab. Like, where's my stuff? Where is my house? Right? And so it was pretty devastating. And my wife's family is from here, and we were actually at my cousin's wedding in Monterey, California, watching. We were watching the Weather Channel and watching Katrina spin out there in the Gulf. And my wife is, she's freaking out. She's on the phone with her mom and stuff. And anyway, we actually came down here a week afterward. And I was like so taken aback with the devastation. It was really like
Mm.
It was just like whole places were gone.
Mm.
Like most of the houses on the beach in Waveland, right? All gone. Um, Here in Long Beach, a lot of that stuff gone.
Yeah.
So it was pretty devastating. Okay, so that's the context. So let's go back to when you were like you broke your ankle and you were all messed up. Did you think about like, oh yeah, I want to continue to keep trying to get into like when I can start to walk, I want to, still find a police force I can join.
Yeah, I mean, I think immediately, especially having gone for my last 2 years, I had my own house in college, and so I was pretty independent to moving back home to, I initially moved in back home with my parents and was going to get like an apartment or something, but couldn't
Hmm.
walk, couldn't take care of myself. So went from being like pretty fully independent to being pretty dependent. And so it was
Hmm.
pretty challenging. And so, yeah, immediately I'm like, all right, can't wait to get back on my feet, and get back in the police for, or,
Literally
for
get
that.
back on your feet.
Yes, right. Literally. And, but as I, as I had, I guess at that point I had my relationship with God was, I grew up in a Christian home, but I think that was maybe the first time that I really was seeking and pursuing kind of His direction for my life. We don't
Hmm.
really even thinking about going into law enforcement. I'm not sure I really prayed too much about what major to, just seemed interesting to me. So I'll say it was really the first time I just began praying like, God, I maybe even stemming out of that, like, why did this happen to me? How could this
Hmm.
happen to me? All those, kind of having pity, self pity, and then just I had several of my buddies that had graduated, and even through college, it's just alcoholism or alcoholism rates are insane for law enforcement. Divorce rates, suicide rates, depression,
Suicide rates, yeah.
all the like negative statistics. Law enforcement for careers is usually in like the top 5 or number 1 spot for all those like negative statistics. And as I think, just it gave me a lot of time to think and pray about things. And I guess I just was kind of like, you know what? I don't know if that is the life that I want, or certainly,
Hmm.
or even, I don't know if that is what God has for me. And so, immediately once I started walking again, the only person that would hire me was my dad, right away. And so, just started, it was a kind of natural fit, started working.
Yeah.
That summer I had I've worked in the golf industry and still do a little bit. I've worked in the golf industry all through high school, into college. And so while I was on crutches and recovering, I managed a pro shop there. So thought about that, but um, started working for my dad, and then a couple months later, we came down here in February of '07.
Mhm.
Really, at different points in that week being down here, God really seemed to put on my heart, my sister's heart, my parents' heart, like, maybe this is what I have for you. And so we were actually driving back home. It was like 17-hour drive back to Virginia. And I don't remember who it was that said it first, but someone said, I think God might be putting on my heart to move down here. And the other one, someone
Wow.
else was like, me too. And someone else was like, me too. And someone else was like, me too.
Yeah.
And so it was actually funny. We got back home, and my sister didn't live at home at the time, and she was working at an architect's office. She's a licensed architect now, and my dad emailed us, and said, "Hey, were we all like serious about this? And if so, let's have some more conversation about this." And we all said, "Yeah." And so that was February of '07, and we said, "Let's make sure we can survive the heat down here." So we came back. Uh,
That's real life right
that's some
there.
wisdom. That's some wisdom. That's right. So we came down in July of 2007, and we were all okay with it. And so my dad had a very, very successful construction business in Northern Virginia. He was 2 years lined out of work, so he had work for the next 2 years,
Wow.
doing mainly remodeling. My sister was working at a very successful law firm. My mom was a teacher, and then there was me, and so we literally, my parents, sold their house, packed up everything, and we moved down here. And we didn't have a immediate place to live, and found a place pretty quickly. And we ran a volunteer organization for about a year, as a family. The organization that we had come down
Mhm.
to work for, the guy that was leading it was kind of ready to transition out, and so we got another Mississippian, Mississippi
Yeah.
Mississippian or
So,
Mississippi. I don't know. But yeah, so that was kind of I don't remember the exact question you said, but that was kind of the process of kind of going shifting for that. It wasn't pun unintended, but fitting. But shifting
Right.
really from that goal of going into law enforcement to okay, this is what's next. And so moved down here,
Mhm.
did the volunteer organization for about a year and a half. Then me and my dad started our business back up. And that was actually one of those that was like a faith, like for, spiritually, like faith building for me. Cause I remember saying to my dad,
I'm sure.
I said, Dad, like, what if we don't have any work down there? Like, what are we gonna, how are you gonna live? My
Yeah.
parents were, my dad was probably making more money than he'd ever made in his life. Kind of got into a pretty comfortable, successful place. And I said, Dad, how do you know you're gonna have work down there? He said, Jess, he said, I don't know that I'll have work here being in Northern Virginia. He said, God
Right.
has just blessed us and opened those doors. And so if he'll take care of us here, he'll take care of us there. And so that really, especially as a 21-year-old, that really that was encouraging to me, and just to hear my dad like literally close up, probably give up millions of dollars worth of work to move down here to literally start all over
Wow.
in his late 50s. My mom and my dad, and just the example that was for my sister and I. And so, but yeah, so then we started our business back up and had a successful business. My mom started working in schools again. My sister, she actually started a nonprofit doing a design build studio for a while, and she started her own architecture business years ago, and she's designed like half the coast, it seems, at least in Pass Christian. And so I was working.
Wait, so aside from Cat Island Coffee House, so for everybody who doesn't know, if you ever come down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and you go through a town called Pass Christian, it's not Pass Christian, it's Pass Christian. There's a place there called Cat Island Coffee House and Books, right?
Yep.
And his sister designed that, like, and you built it, right? You and your dad built it.
We did, and
Yeah.
there's not a straight wall in that place, not a design flaw. There's like so many angles in that place.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But
It's one of the most interesting buildings that I've been in down here, and the coffee's pretty good too. So
it
go
is.
check it out. So yeah. So how long had you been down here before you like? I know the answer to this because this is like kind of where I came in, right? But
Yeah.
how long were you down here and like doing construction before you felt the call into ministry?
Yeah. There was. I think even through that, there was a lot of, you know, I think fairly early on in that process, um, kind of maybe knew that this wasn't what like God had for me. Ultimately, I think for several reasons. One, my dad, God bless him. He just retired a couple years ago, and into his like late 60s, he's out there working every day, 9 to 5,
Like
in
1,000 degrees outside.
and just seeing how hard he worked, and just being a small business owner, just like I don't know if I want this for the rest of my life. So just that practical side, I think. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my sister in that time, my sister got married to a CB, Navy CB. If you don't know what a Navy CB is, it's the Navy construction battalion. They do a lot of the
Shout
infrastructure.
out Ty. What's
That's
up,
right.
Ty?
That's right. They do much of the infrastructure work for much of the U.S. military, kind of all over the world, going and building schools and bridges and all sorts of stuff.
There was
Uh,
a John Wayne movie. I think it was a John Wayne movie, The Fighting CBs. Yeah, go check it out.
okay,
Go ahead.
it's the letter CB, so construction battalion, but they play on that, and there's like a mascot of a bumblebee that is at sea.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
you didn't ask for that. So I think even just kind of uh, I had been in a pretty serious relationship, and kind of moving down here that ended, and so I think even just wanting to have be married. Um, I moved out in 2008. Got my own house. Well, the summer of 2008. Actually, I went out to right outside of Pittsburgh to work at a golf camp out there, and that fall I was actually going to come back to Mississippi for a couple months and then go out to Wyoming to be a snowmobile guide. I'd never been on a snowmobile, but you go out there for like you go out there like
I've heard of this.
yeah, you go out there like 2 weeks ahead of time, and they train you to be a snowmobile guide. And then these people pay, I think, like thousands of dollars to come on these snowmobile tours. And I'm like, you're gonna let somebody that has like 2 weeks of snowmobile experience like lead these people? Like, anyways, so I'll have to say I didn't do that, but I think that was just really even kind of at that point. Like I said, I went and did that golf camp, and then I was gonna do that, and so really kind of even early on was just I was like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life, you know? And
Yeah.
I had, like I said, I got my own house. I started making a lot of poor choices. I definitely went through depression.
Hmm.
Actually, was about 8 feet from taking my own life. Just went through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of downs, a lot of them, most of them self-inflicted. And so
Fist fighting with the neighbors.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
There was a night of that where literally got punched in the nose, and um, anyway, blood from my nose, all sorts of stuff. I was like 24 years old and had to call my parents, mom and dad. I was drunk. Will you come take me to the hospital? And that was a fun call to make. So, I'll say just I think there was, and so again, looking back now, I know it was spiritually two things. One, just as a follower of Jesus, I was claiming to be a follower of Jesus, and I was not living it. And so there was that aspect of it that just caused this tension in my life. And then I think the second part of that was I think I was just doing something because it paid the bills and got me a check, but I never really stopped and thought about those questions, like what do I want to do? Like what has God designed me to do? Like what is my purpose in life? And
Right.
so I think because of just again a lot of factors, I was in just a place of really kind of internal turmoil
Hmm.
and searching. And so I didn't do the snowmobile guide thing. I applied to I got accepted to a vet school in Colorado, and I was going to go be a vet tech. And like last minute, I decided not to go. Then I applied and got into a nursing program here in the coast. I was going to be a nurse. Didn't do
Wow.
that. I was thinking about I remember going across the Bay St. Louis Bridge and talking to my dad. We were driving to a job site, and I was like, Dad, I think I might go into the military. And it's just so I was all over the place from
Oh yeah.
golf instructor to snowmobile guide to veterinarian to nurse to all those things. And so all I had to say, that is where you and your wife came in. I met y'all when I started going to a church. And God, I know God put y'all in my life, really
Mhm.
to pour into me, to come alongside me, to, I guess, lack of a better term, kind of take me under your wing. And God definitely used y'all to disciple me, to even help me mature, just you know, practically speaking. And just through that, really began to kind of, I guess, land a little bit and start
Okay.
to be able to figure out what it was that God was leading me into.
Yeah. So what year was that?
So
What
we,
year was it that you got your first like ministry position?
yeah, I thought
Let's go there.
you were gonna say what year did I get my face bashed in. Uh, so I think we met around 2009.
Yeah.
Uh, 2000,
Or maybe 2010. I think it was early 2010.
okay, yeah, I was gonna say it was end of '09, beginning of 10, and um, I had come from I was going to another church from '07 to then, and then and at that church had just kind of started getting into some ministry, working with youth, doing some
Hmm.
kids ministry, and I led a mission trip to Peru at that church. And so me and another guy that actually worked with me and my dad at the time, we led a trip down to Iquitos, Peru. It's the world's largest
No,
city,
that's right.
accessible by road. So you either have to take a boat up the Amazon or fly from Lima into Iquitos. And I think so that was 2000. That was like summer of 2009, I think, or 2008. I think it was 2008. Took that trip, and um, so just I think on that trip it was interesting. No, let's see, that was that was 2008. Anyways, and so I think it was on that trip though, really kind of was like, maybe could I do this? Like, would this be something I could do from out, just to get to be a missionary, be, live in another country, these things. And so then fast forward to 2009, 10, started coming to your church, started really several people pouring into me, started getting involved a little bit with student ministry again, and led another mission trip to the same place in Peru, but now with this new church, the church that you and your wife, you and Angel went to. And it was on that trip that so the name of the church was Gulf Coast Church, or Gulf Coast Worship Center at the time.
Back in the day.
That's right. The youth pastor from Gulf Coast Worship Center also went on that trip. And when he and his wife were on that trip, they really felt God put on their heart to be missionaries there in Peru. And so they came home 2 months later, they were living in Peru. And so now our church didn't have a youth pastor. And I had just started getting involved with another local ministry. And that local ministry had a summer like youth camp type thing where like 9 churches from across the coast. It was called One, based on Acts 4:32. Just the believers were of one mind and one spirit. And so all these churches came together of youth, and I was in the back of this room. I was running sound and just seeing all these kids. And I know it was not the audible voice of God, but it was the clearest the Holy Spirit's ever spoken to me. And he said, "This is it. This is what I have for you." I was like, "What? Like what?" And he kind of repeated, like, "This is it." I was like, I didn't really fully know what that meant.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
And I like looked behind me, and there was like a wall behind me. So, and so just so in that season though, I was still kind of had, foot in the world. I was professing to be a follower of Christ, but really not following him in many aspects of life. And so that was maybe part of the confusion. I was like, no, I couldn't do this. So just kind of began pursuing that. And I was like, well, the church needs a youth pastor, so I'll apply. So that was 2013. And I applied, and I remember I sat down with the pastor of the church. I said, "Hey, I'm thinking of applying for this position." He said, "Well, if that's what you feel like God's leading you to do, go for it." And then, like 2 years later, I remember asking him. I said, "You remember that lunch?" He said, "Oh yeah." I said, Did you know what I was going to share with you?" He said, "I knew you were like discontent with your career and whatever, but I had no clue the words 'I'm going to apply for youth pastor' would come out of your mouth." And
I've heard him tell that story too.
Yes. And so I'll say that that they got a ton of applications, and again, I've heard the story after the fact. And one of the elders, they're passing the applications around the table, and one of the pastors the elders of the church just stops and looks at my application, and like looks up at the pastor and says, "Is this like Jesse McBride? Jesse McBride?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Huh?" And he's like, "I wouldn't have thought that." And I was like, but I would say, look, again, probably one of the moments where maybe that shift, that spiritually, that I knew that God was saying, "Look, are you going to be serious about following me, or are you going to keep playing games?" Is I was refereeing soccer. I still am a soccer referee, and I was at a tournament. And back before I was married, probably 2 to 4 weekends a month. I would travel to mainly here in Mississippi, but also in Tennessee, a little bit in Atlanta, Houston. And so when you travel around like this, probably like 70% of the referees are kind of the same core that you kind of just travel around to all these tournaments.
Oh.
So you get to know each other fairly well. And kind of the MO was you'd ref 5, 6, 7, 8 games on a Saturday. And Saturday night, you'd go out with the referees and go to the local bar and rehydrate. And so we were there. And one of these refs, he knew me, but we'd regularly go to the bar each other. And it was the week after I got home from that second mission trip where I really felt like God was putting on my heart, maybe this is what he had for me. One of the other refs said, "Oh, I saw on Facebook that you were on a mission trip." And this guy said, he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I saw that too." And I thought, what's Jesse McBride doing on a mission trip?
Oh, wow.
And that, like, I mean, even saying that, kind of get like choked up. It's just like
Yeah.
that hurt because I told people that I was a Christian. I was even like applying to be a youth pastor, and here's someone that was surprised that I was on a mission trip. And again, I know that was just a moment that the Holy Spirit used to kind of direct me and really just convict me and say, look, if you're going to walk into this, if I'm calling you to this, there's it's conditional on you obeying and you walking into that. And so all I'd say I knew for me, a step of obedience was to go back to seminary. I don't think the pastor doesn't have to go to seminary to be a pastor, but for me, it was a step of obedience. You and your wife really kind of poured into me. There were two other guys that really ministered to me. I actually kind of threw that and so I applied for that position, and thankfully the church did not hire me, and they knew, and they said, look, we don't want to discourage you, but we just don't think that you're ready to be in that position of leadership or lead youth ministry. And that was really hard. And in fact, I think had a dream one night and shared that with a friend, and kind of through that dream felt like, again, God was just speaking to me like, I knew that was coming. I know it's a setback and that's really discouraging, but are you going to still walk in obedience with what I've called you to? And so I really wanted to just drop out of seminary and like, God, I knew you called me to this. And if I didn't get it, I just wanted to, walk away. But again, I was confident that this is where God was leading me. So I stayed in seminary, just kind of allowed myself to be shepherded by some other people. And through that process, a year later, the church hadn't hired someone. They had actually brought a couple people in to like almost hire them. Like that was the last step, and then it didn't work out. So a year later, they were still looking. I said, "Hey, I'm still interested." And so the pastor said, "I'll let the board know at the next meeting." And so he met with me the next week. He said, "I told the board, and they all have seen what God's done in your life and feel like you're ready now. And so we'd like to offer you the job." And so, so it was really that was it was just going back to the beginning of our conversation. It was a very long journey, and again, even those missed opportunities with law enforcement, or literally God knocking me off my feet. Looking back now, I know that He was guiding me, but even just that last year and a half until getting there, it was hard. It was
Getting you right into that speeding ticket.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Divinely appointing that cop to be there, and being an unwilling, ungracious police officer. I don't know. God bless. He was doing his job. God bless him. But all to say, so that was that process, and so I was a youth pastor for 6 years, and was a stateside missionary, part time, raising support as a missionary, and then got married in 2015. Again, in 2005, me and my wife Kayla dated for about 2 months, I think, in college, and then we broke up and had nothing to do with each other for about 10 years. We reconnected.
Make it sound like it was. Well, anyway, go ahead.
We reconnected in May of 2015. Got engaged in July and got married in September. And actually, I know we're running short on time, but I'm gonna tell the story anyways. But actually, that's another, like I said, you and I have been great friends for a long time, and it was, you had invited me to go to a worship leader conference in Atlanta. That's Atlanta. No,
City Church.
Yeah, that was in Atlanta. And I'm not, I was like, I'm not a worship leader. Why'd you invite me? Like, just come. So we went, and the pastor of that church, Louis Giglio, there was a breakout session, and I went to that breakout session, and it was he and his wife, Shelly. And I was surprised. There were only like 30 people in the room, and it was a pretty large conference. So I was like, why is nobody else here? But anyways, they were just sitting on stools, just like sharing their heart and just kind of going from one, not necessarily like finishing each other's thoughts, but just, you could tell that like God was using them together as a couple. And then that's God's design for marriage. Like when God created Eve, said that it's because it was his helper or his helpmate, not because that's not like a less than. There were things God created Adam to do, there were things that God created Eve to do that Adam couldn't do. And so it's just, that's why marriage is like that perfect picture of two people coming together to complement each other and work together. So I'll say, but just seeing how they were working together, I remember thinking, I was like, God, that's what I want. And so I had been in ministry for about 10 months at that point. I was single. The weekend before, I had preached at my church, at our church, on going through trials. And I kind of shared one of the trials I'm walking through is I want to be married. That's like a desire of my heart, and I'm not married. Anyway, seeing them, and I just said, God, that's what I want. I want someone to be a helpmate, just someone, a partner in ministry. And so that was that weekend. That Sunday night, I got home, reconnected with Kayla through Facebook, and we've talked every day since. And that was actually one of those cool things.
That's a funny way to say it. Yes, you have, because you've been married for a while now. That's hilarious.
Right. You know, and that was one of those things that God had put on her heart about in like January of 2015. She told me this like a month later. She said, God just, we weren't talking. She didn't know that I was in ministry, any of those things. But she said, I felt like God was preparing me to be a helpmate for someone in ministry. Um, and and so I was like, wow, that's crazy. And so it was like the next week I was talking to my parents, and I told them that. I said, it's crazy. Like, I think she might be the one, y'all. Like, even like 6 months ago, God put on her heart that she'd be a helpmate for someone in ministry. And my mom started crying. I said, Mom, why are you crying? And she said, well, Jess, since before you were born, for you and your sister, me and your father prayed that God would, provide a spouse for you. And she said, but there were several years of your life that I knew that if you got married, it would be a disaster. She said, so she said, for several years, I actually prayed that God would not put someone in your life because I knew that you weren't ready to be a husband. And she said, I just saw what God had done in your life. And she said, around January, I started praying that God would provide a helpmate for you for ministry. So like around the same exact time, the same exact thing that like my mom was praying for, God put on Kayla's heart. It was like almost the exact same word that, I had kind of, as I was sitting there listening to Shelley and Louis Giglio, I was like, it can't be a coincidence. And so I ought to say, you didn't ask for all that, but yeah, so that's really kind of my journey. And since then we went through maybe one of the greatest challenges of our marriage with a ministry that we've been working with, changed directions, but we were like, we know what God's called us to. And so for a season, we were able to we came under our church as resident missionaries. And back last year, we started our own ministry. And so,
all right. So a lot of times, I ask people about their, all different questions about like their career paths and their journey and all the shifts and all that stuff, right? And then usually toward the end of that, we always talk about like something that they're involved in, that they're passionate about. And I think this is a great time to ask you about what ministry you're involved in now.
Yeah. So our ministry is Para Ministry. So in English, we might say it Para. And even that was as my wife and I were just searching scripture in 1 Thessalonians 5. It says that continue to encourage one another as you have been doing. And that Greek word for encourage is just is to come alongside. And the word is parakaleo. And so para is alongside, kaleo is to call alongside. And so we were like, what about para? And it was neat that our Kayla's grandfather had like the day before emailed us and said, hey, I know you're trying to pick a name for your ministry. What if it was like Encouragement International Ministries? Like that wouldn't even fit on a mug.
So long.
You need like a triple XL shirt just to write it all on there. But we're like encourage, and then we were both like, we were just reading First Thessalonians, chapter 5, and so we're like, what about para? Because in Greek it means alongside, and that's one of the things. That's our heart, is to come alongside pastors and ministry leaders, and just encourage being a pastor. Some of those same statistics that I shared about law enforcement are also true about pastors. Loneliness, depression.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, divorce rates. Just a lot of these, just because the challenges of being a pastor are just unreal. And actually, I think it was Pew Research just ranked it as the third hardest leadership position of all. And Pew Research is a secular research company. that it was like the third hardest of all leadership positions. And so just to be able to come alongside pastors, and so then Spain, and we right now we also go down for usually about a month at a time to Central America. Right now we're in Mexico, Belize, and Honduras, and
It was Honduras. I was thinking Guatemala. I think
we
I posted on Facebook about Guatemala.
we work with leaders in Guatemala, but
Yeah.
because one of the areas in Belize that we work with is right on the Guatemala border, and the Guatemalans come over into Belize. So
Oh, okay.
into Guatemala, one of the churches, it's like literally, and you know this, but so close to the border, they have a soccer field behind their church, and one goes in Belize, one goes in Guatemala. Uh, so playing soccer, your passport fills up quick. And the so that's where we're working right now, and we've just and so in Spanish, para means for, and that's what we are for God, we are for the church, but we are for pastors, just to encourage them to come alongside them. And then in English, we understand it as like parallel, and so our logo is a P that kind of has two parallel lines, just that idea of walking alongside, just doing life with, and so we do that through like pastoral coaching, discipleship, Bible study. But probably the one thing that we hear so many times from pastors is just thank you for listening to me. So there's about
Mhm.
35 pastors here in the U.S. that I meet with one on one. My wife meets with several pastors' wives, and a lot of times it's just sitting there, just listening, asking them some good intentional questions, maybe that no one else is asking for them,
Yeah.
praying for them. You'd be surprised how many times we ask a pastor, "Hey, how can I pray for you?" And they'll say, "I don't know. No one's asked me that in a while." Uh, you know,
Mm,
everyone asks their pastor to pray for them, but no one asks their pastor, "How can I
yeah.
pray for you?" So,
Hey, you know what? I don't know if I told you, but you know how like so the Philippines was ruled by Spain for like 300 something years, right? So there's a lot of Spanish loan words in Tagalog. And so one of them, when you say parang something that's like this, it means like.
huh.
So like something. So it can be used with that as well. I mean, it goes with that. So my question to you is like, when are we going to the Philippines, right?
Hey, I've actually virtually worked with some leaders in the Philippines. But yeah, we'll go where when God, whatever finances God provides, and wherever we are at Para is a nonprofit, and as you know, but your wife is one of the board members on our board, and it's just been neat to see where God has brought us, and get to go down to Central America with our 2 and 4 year old girls, and just allow them to see different cultures, and even see how God uses them as little 2 and 4 year olds. And again,
Mhm.
being able to do that together with my wife, it's been incredible. And so all I'd say, and the name of the podcast or the show or the what do you call it, a podcast? Oh, that's not a
Yeah, yeah.
okay, okay. On
Podcast show thing.
a LinkedIn cast. Um, his shift is, Kayla and I never sat down and said, "Hey, let's start our own ministry, or let's try to get in as many countries as we can." It was just really kind of that, like, one shift at a time. I went to a youth pastor conference, and he one of the speakers was taught Bob Goff was his name. He was talking about how in a lot of like really expensive wineries, they have someone who their only job is to go through the entire winery every day and just turn the bottles a quarter turn
Oh, yeah.
every day. And by turning them just a quarter turn, keeps sediment from building up and kind of keeps that
Right.
wine fresh. And I'd say that's maybe a good picture kind of what God is doing in my life, my family's life, our ministry is. It's like there, even though I've had a major shift go from law enforcement to construction to ministry, there's sometimes even like daily shifts of just, where are we going? What are we doing?
Mhm.
I think that's true. Maybe again, whether someone's listening, they're spiritual, not spiritual, is like life is all about shifts and how we react and respond to those
Yeah,
shifts,
that's right.
because life is not linear. Life is not structured, and I think especially in today's political climate, and just everything that's happening today, there's just rapid changes, and that's the I think that's maybe sometimes what determines our quality of life, is being able to adjust to those shifts, adjust to those changes in a way where we realize we're not in control of those shifts. And obviously, spiritually, I believe, I know you believe, it's because God's in control. And so it's how can we, pursue Him? There's one of my favorite books. It's called Wild Goose Chase, and it's because in Celtic, the word for the Holy Spirit is wild goose, and it's this idea of like kind of chasing that wild goose. And spiritually, it's like the Holy Spirit. It's not that He is confusing or keeps us guessing, but it's like life is not just meant to be stagnant. Life is not. I don't even believe life is meant to be comfortable. And especially here in the U.S., we pursue comfort. We pursue stability, and those things. Like there's no such thing, I don't think, as stability in living here on Earth.
No.
And that's why we see some of the behavioral and a lot of those things. I believe we see is because many times we're pursuing something that is truly unpursuable. Again, my belief apart from God. So,
Man, that's good. That was really good. And before you go, say hi. It's funny because every time he comments on this show, it comes up as LinkedIn user.
what's up, LinkedIn user?
That's that's Brandon Christian Burns.
Hey, what's up, Brandon?
So I say Brandon Christian Burns because that was what it was on Facebook, and then just on LinkedIn it's Christian Burns. But anyway,
Brandon, formerly known as Christian.
Yeah, every time you comment, dude, every time it comes up as LinkedIn user. And so anyway, he was supposed to be on the show. We're gonna get together and record something here pretty soon because it's hard to get him, because of the time difference because he's in California. You say you miss it, Brandon. How do you miss I think you live in like Northern California, like in the wilds of Northern California, and you miss like the dead heat of summer in Mississippi. I mean, you were saying that like you guys came down here July. Yeah, that's a perfect time to figure out if you really want to live down here or if you just want to like croak because it's so hot,
Yeah.
So anyway, I know you got to go. So our man here, Jesse, has a meeting to get to in like the next 3 minutes. He's still reffing, and so he's got to get to a reffing meeting. But man, I just want to thank you for coming on here and really giving your testimony. Most of the time, the people that come on here are talking about, real like secular careers, not talking about ministry, but like to be able to bring you on here is awesome because it gives you an opportunity to give your testimony of what God's done in your life, as well as, really give a picture to people that like, career paths, they're not linear. Like you said, career paths are not linear. And there's any number of ways that things can go. And you just really never know, what God has planned for you. So with that being said, next week, my guest is a special guest. He is one of my brothers-in-law. I have 4 brothers-in-law, and only one is not named Michael. That one is not coming on. However, Michael Burks is going to be on. He's an Army veteran. He's the head pastor at Unity Baptist Church in DeRidder, Louisiana. But he's going to come on here and talk about his journey as well. And I want to thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for commenting in the chat. And if you have any questions or if you just want to connect with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you're watching on YouTube and you just put something on there too, and we'll connect. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. Peace.
All right.